What is up, everybody, and welcome to the final Bettin and Boozin show of the 2024 Breeders' Cup previews we have here on the HHH Racing Podcast. I'm your proud host, Kyle Roscoe, and what a weekend it's shaping out to be, as right now we are going to cover the first four races of the Breeders' Cup variety, I guess, but the first four Breeders' Cup races on Saturday, which includes Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint, the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint, the Breeders' Cup Distaff, and of course, the very wide open Breeders' Cup Turf. And if you guys want the late pick five right after this show at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Picks and Ponies, Howard, Pete, Paul will be covering the late pick five on Championship Saturday that actually starts with the Classic, as we all know, with everything going on with that. We'll probably jab at it a couple times, but nothing too explicit, of course, in this podcast. But guys, shaping up to be a great show. As you screen on the bottom side of the screen, please go down below the video player. Please hit the like button and hit the subscribe button if you guys have been enjoying the Breeders' Cup content coming out on the HHH Racing Podcast. We do this every single week. Bettin and Boozin is every single week at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time Wednesdays. Picks and Ponies is every single Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And Pacific Horseplayers is a show on Wednesday with Noah and Ryan covering West Coast racing at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Wednesday. So again, every single week of the year we do this. It's not just during Breeders' Cup or Kentucky Derby week. Racing races 52 weeks out of the year. So hopefully you guys will subscribe and come back after the Breeders' Cup is done. bettinandboozin@gmail.com is my email. Please email me with any questions, comments, or concerns. Also, all of us are going to be at the Breeders' Cup this Friday and Saturday. So we would love to see you guys there. If you guys are out there, please reach out to me or Howard, my Twitter right here at AP Roscoe K on Twitter. Please follow me over there. The DMs are open. So if you guys want to meet up, I would love to obviously meet you guys and we'll have a beverage together or something like that. So again, today's show is going to be the first four Breeders' Cup races on Saturday. Second show at 7:30 p.m. Eastern is going to be the last five Breeders' Cup races. Real quick, guys, of course, every single episode posted the HHH Racing Podcast channel is available in audio form, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor. Please go rate, review, and subscribe over there if you want to watch these in audio form. Our new socials, guys, TikTok and Instagram at Bettin and Boozin Podcast. I post highlights of show, schedules coming up, everything in between at Bettin and Boozin Podcast on both TikTok and Instagram. And of course, go check out our beautiful website, hhhracingpodcast.com. If you guys didn't subscribe to those Breeders' Cup Power Picks, unfortunately, you are now too late. The deadline, as mentioned as on yesterday's show, was noon today, Eastern Standard Time. So hopefully, if you guys got them, you guys will enjoy them. Again, a ton of work has gone into these, over 30 pages of information. So good luck to everybody that bought those this Saturday, but guys, for this Friday and Saturday. But guys, let's get right into it here. We won't waste anyone's time. And just like the old days, we got the good old crew back and ready to go. Boys from the East Coast of New Jersey, now a member apparently of San Diego, California, Patrick Kunsel from The Ohio State University, from Chicago, Illinois, Charlie Freeman, and the man himself crawling back to the Bettin and Boozin ranks, the host of Pacific Horseplayers here on the HHH Racing Podcast, Noah Maher. Boys, Breeders' Cup season is almost upon us, almost under 48 hours until the first post on Friday that we'll all see in person. What's going on today?
It's good to have the whole group back again. Feels very unfamiliar. Feels almost like we're having a guest on at this point, like when Noah first joined. Feels like he's.
I don't know if I should take it as a compliment or an insult.
That's what I should have introduced him as our special guest.
That would have been great. That would have been great.
But either way, guys, we'll see who's in the chat real quick. Then we'll get right into the picks as always. Katie, of course, is here. Katie was here 5:30 p.m. an hour before. Katie, thanks so much for joining the show. Greatly appreciate it. Kentucky Horseplayer. New name. I haven't recognized you before. Thanks so much for joining the show. Greatly appreciate it. Michael Austin, of course, is here, sitting up in my room in La Jolla, watching HHH. Absolutely, my friend. Thanks so much for joining the show. Robbie Courtney is here. Mark Flanagan is here. Happy Breeders' Cup to you as well, Mark. Ed Burke is here. Fantasy bracket pool BNB legend Ed Burke is here. Ed, thanks so much for joining the show. Greatly appreciate it. Felipe Jr. Hernandez Jr. is here. Chris Couples is here. Nathan Woodward, his name I haven't seen in a long time, that we met at the Indiana Derby. Nathan, thanks so much for doing the show. Appreciate, and good luck to you in the Breeders' Cup as well. Rockface is here. I haven't seen this name before either. Rockface, thanks so much for joining the show. He says he has a hunch that there's a runner in the juvenile that's going to outrun big odds. The horse is Hill Road, shipper from Ireland. That's definitely one that's interesting, and they've been raving about him in the morning. So Rockface, if you're correct, you're going to get paid. So good luck with Hill Road there. Superfecta Hecta, fantastic name. Let's go. Thanks so much for doing the show. Another new name. Always love to shout out the new names. And HHH Racing Podcast legend, Mr. Davey Lane is here, even though it's late out there in the UK. Davey, man, thanks so much for joining the show. Kenneth Martin as well here in San Diego. Kenneth, if you're in San Diego, hopefully we get to see you out there at the Breeders' Cup. Boys, let's get into it here. We're not going to waste too many people's time, and we have to be off the air here for the boss and company at 6:30. Guys, the first race we're going to cover is the Filly and Mare Sprint, and even though it kind of looks like a matchup race between three of these horses, it's going to be a very good race nonetheless, at least on paper. It's also a field of 10 in the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint. Of course, all of these are going to be grade 1 races. The morning line favorite is the number 9, Ways and Means, at a pretty good price of 5-2. I don't know if she'll be 5-2, but of course we'll get into that in a little bit. Second choice on the morning line is the number 6, Society, for Tyler Gaffleone and Steve Asmussen at 3-1. And your third choice is number 4, the Queen, Vava, for Irad Ortiz and Cherie DeVoe at 4-1. And I'll bring up our picks right now as I switch over to the DRF guys. And 3 of us are going with the morning line favorite, Ways and Means. Noah, always got to be the odd man out, man. Our special guest is got to put himself out there and see if he can be more correct than the rest of us. Look, Society's very good. We all have her somewhere. Patrick and I actually are going with the same exact picks. And Pat, I love that for you. Hopefully we can cash. And Charlie's the only one that has one other horse in there except Vava. So this is going to be, like I said, we're all in the same mix except, we have one other horse underneath. Noah, you're the odd man out. I will let you talk first. Again, I'll show time just like we did last night. I will show time form first. Feel free to talk about the pace scenario as I know for me, and I know for a couple of us, if not all of us on the screen, we start out looking at pace. Time Form US with DRF Formulator does a fantastic job. Not a sponsor at all, but I use strictly DRF Formulator now, and they do a fantastic job with pacing out what the race is going to look like on the first turn. Noah, floor is yours with the number 6, Society.
And it's funny you mentioned the time form pace projector, because that was one of the things that I took most into account. You see here, they've got Society on the lead, which I don't know if that's going to be the case, just because the 3 Pleasant is a very fast filly from the Bob Baffert barn, and it seems like she's only got one way to go. But either way, I like Society's chances quite a bit, just because if she does get the lead, she's proven to be very tough on it. And then if she sits right off Pleasant, I think she's going to be really tough to beat. And Ways and Means, I think, is going to have to run a big race to run her down, especially if he runs back to the race last time in the Ballerina. She was exceptional. Just sat right off the lead, kicked away, kind of got the proverbial first jump. And I kind of just see a similar scenario here. Tyler rides back. She's in really good form as she was going into last year. Didn't work out too well for her, and she's 0-2 in the Breeders' Cup. But hopefully third time's the charm for this mare.
And I mean, look, you said it sat right off the speed. You see Vava on the inside, a little bit of a disappointing effort from her. But you see Scylla, the number 10, who Charlie has in third right here on the outside, trying to run her down. But you're right, Noah, I agree. Very impressive win in this race, obviously coming back out of this race to run in the Breeders' Cup. So Society, emphatic winner at Saratoga. However, I feel like this is, Pat, this is going to be a little bit of a different scenario here. She's drawn to the outside of Pleasant. However, Ways and Means is not slow at all. I mean, she's done her best running just sitting off the speed. But if Society and Pleasant run fast early, Ways and Means is surely the most likely winner at that point, because she's going to be the one to get first run on a lot of others.
Yeah, for sure. She's had that style of being able to, stalk and kind of pounce on whoever's on the lead. And I think what you just brought up about her doing that in this spot. Could be why she just is the best horse in here. I really did like the race in the test. I mean, that was
Yeah.
ultra impressive that day.
Which is
Against
actually
that.
the race I wanted to show because not to steal your thunder, Pat. Sorry to cut you off.
No, you're good.
But I mean, look at this race. I mean, Ways and Means, Emery, and my main squeeze in the test, right? Emery's come back to obviously flatter that form, won convincingly in the Raven Run over my main squeeze. So the fact that race has kept its form, and I'll show the replay right now of the test, I just feel like that's going to be the race that's truly key for Ways and Means.
Yeah, you thought that was the day for Emery, on the lead there for a while, but was just kept getting pushed by Ways and Means, and it just ended up shaking her loose and was able to get up for the win in the test. I do wonder going out to Del Mar, you always got to question the shipping and stuff like that because this horse, pretty much has done most of its running. If it wasn't, obviously in Kentucky, it was in New York, and then, in Florida did have some issues there. So maybe that's a little bit of a concern. But other than that, Ways and Means would be one of my more likely winners on Saturday.
Yeah, which I don't disagree with you, Charlie. Obviously, you have this horse on top as well. I just, from my thinking, Society's done obviously very well, and she's going to sit right off the speed. However, I can't imagine that Ways and Means is going to be that far back. The farthest she's been back in her career is 4, and that was when she was 2 in the spin away. But her 3-year-old year, farthest she's been back is 2 lengths. And if she's going to sit right behind the speed of Society and Pleasant, which Pleasant I don't think has a winning chance in hell really in this race, based on the competition she's going against and the trip I think she's going to get. However, Ways and Means should get theoretically a perfect trip.
Yeah, as I like to say with Pleasant, when I'm talking about bad sports teams, thanks for coming out. That horse has no chance. But yeah, I think Ways and Means will be pretty close. I have a feeling, like you said, I think she's within a length and a half or 2 lengths and just uses that outside post to her advantage, which is why I kind of like her drawing out there. She doesn't have to worry about getting closed off on the rail or anything like that. I think she can sit within a length and a half or 2 lengths of the pace if they, go in a hotter pace because of Pleasant and Society chooses to go with Pleasant at that hot pace, and maybe she does sit closer to that 2-length distance. And if, they try to slow him down and get loose, then maybe Ways and Means sits within a length or a length and a half, like I was saying to that. I just think she's versatile. She's ran against such tough competition, and she can kind of create herself such a great trip that she's not really a horse you ever see where you're like, God, she has so much work to do late. So I feel like I wouldn't go as far as to say, for me personally, she's a best bet, but I do think she is a pretty safe. It is the safest pick to go with here in this spot from a talent perspective and also from a trip perspective.
And I'll tell you what, if I get 5-2, I might have to implore our brand new segment of an irresponsible wager, our new sponsored segment, irresponsible wager of the week. Charlie, I'll let you finish up here because you have Scylla, a horse that we don't have anywhere. She's obviously very talented. For me, I just think she might just be a little bit of a step below some of these in here, but she's ran fantastic races and she's 9 for 9 in the money lifetime.
Yeah, for me, the quality is not a concern. I do think she classes up with this field. I think the concern that you could mainly argue would be, is the distance work? Because obviously you look at her career and outside of her debut going 6 furlongs at Keeneland, she's only been going a mile and 16th. So for me, I just thought maybe she needed that race in terms of like learning and understanding how 7 furlongs work, because it isn't the same thing. When you haven't run less than a mile or mile 16th, mile and 8th for a while and has been running against other competition, I know the horse retired, but still, Adair Manor was a very talented horse, and she decided something, to actually go to the lead and take it to her in that race. And I just think here, I will admit, I do think to an extent, Scylla is a bit of a pace-dependent horse in this race to me. I think she is going to need enough of a setup. I don't think she has the natural speed like you were hinting. I think that's where class could be a concern. But I do see a scenario where, Baffert sends like hell with Pleasant, which could set up for Scylla, and then Society maybe doesn't sit quite as well and chooses to actually go with. And again, we talk about how Ways and Means should sit, but as you touch on, Ways and Means is not a stalker like time form is indicating, where Ways and Means is right next to Scylla. She really is more of a presser that likes to be right behind him. And if they get into a pace duel, those 3 towards the front, which I don't think is impossible, Scylla could happily just let them do that dirty work, stay clear on the outside without being too wide, and just get that perfect dream trip ride where it sets up for her. And maybe she isn't quite as classy, but with the trip and ability she does have, do enough at a price to at least get up and maybe win. But for me, I'd love to find a way to use her under one of the favorites. In my case, Ways and Means.
I mean, look, 10 to 1 is especially a good price on a horse like this.
Crazy.
Where I don't know, maybe you won't get that, but there's enough money taken underneath at least in the three that we're going to talk about here, where she could be high singles minimum. And the fact that if the pace does heat up, you could look back to the Fleur de Lis here, where she ended up passing a really nice horse and shotgun hottie to get up for the win in the Fleur de Lis. So completely respect the opinion, Charlie. Obviously, she's also going to have to navigate from that 10 hole. Last horse I want to fully talk about, then we'll go to the chat for a couple, is a horse that's honestly very near and dear to my heart, being top of the fan club, as fans of Bettin and Boozin would know, of Cherie DeVaux. Shout out Brilliant Birdie, by the way, this past weekend. She's run absolutely fantastic in, I'd say, 90% of her races. And Matt Bernier talked about it on the post-draw show. Granted, being very selective, right? But if you take out all her races in New York, basically, I mean, so Ballerina and Cherie DeVaux, if you're listening, if you watch the Breakfast at the Breeders' Cup, Cherie DeVaux was on today talking about Vava, and she actually scratched from a race in her 3-year-old year in Saratoga because she didn't like the way she was training on the track. She noticed that Vava didn't necessarily like the track she was training on. So they scratched her and moved. Well, they didn't scratch her, but they took her somewhere else to run. And then now, so when they ran her back in the Ballerina and she didn't run that well, it almost sounded like Cherie didn't sound that surprised that she didn't run that well. But you throw out that Ballerina, especially in this year. I mean, even going back to last year, I mean, won the Charlestown Oaks convincingly, won the Raven Run over Alva Star, who her and Vava had a really great rivalry there. Then the Madison ran well just behind Alva Star, who got away that day. Then came back in the Derby City Distaff on Derby Day that we all watched live. Won very convincingly that day. Won great in the Chicago, and then comes back to the Saratoga track where she might not like it. The other thing I like about Vava, guys, is I think she's very, very good at this 7 furlong distance. She's 8 for 8 in the money, 5 for 8 on the win end at this 7 furlong distance. And as Charlie kind of pointed out with Scylla, right? It's in that kind of middling distance where horses that, like to run 6 furlongs might just be a little bit too long for them. And horses like Scylla that like to run a mile or longer might just be a little too short. It's kind of a weird middling distance. And I think Vava is that one that kind of raises that specialty here for that 7 furlongs. Noah, anything you want to touch on with what I said? I've been blabbing on for a long time. I don't want to throw it away to someone else before I keep talking about my Cherie DeVaux runners.
No, I think if you're playing a horizontal ticket, you have to use her. Just looking at races and trying to narrow down myself, I badly wanted to just use 6-9 on my tickets, but she scares the crap out of me. Just because I know she's got races that she can go back to. And the point that you make about not liking Saratoga very much. I mean, if you scratch that race and just look at her last 3, I mean, those are just visually dominant on paper. Her race in the Derby City Distaff when we were there was just super impressive. We were located at the 16th pole or the 8th pole, and once she took the lead, you just knew it was over. But you have to use her, and I think those 3 are very interchangeable.
Yeah, I feel like if you're horizontal, I feel like you can really get by with 3 and move on in this race. Like I said, I completely respect Scylla, but from an outside trip perspective, going 7, maybe it's not what she wants to do. I'm willing to look past her, although she is a very nice price comparatively to these 3 horses. So that's the one factor that could sway me in that direction. However, again, I got to stop talking about Vava, because the more I talk about Vava, the more and more likely I'm going to put her on top. And I think Ways and Means might just be better at this time in the year. So a lot of us have Ways and Means on top. And really, the other horses, there's been a couple there's been some love for like My Magic Philly, Noah, who's a Phil D'Amato horse coming from the West Coast, as kind of that West Coast Del Mar type horse who's 2 for 2 at Del Mar. However, she has to show that she classes up to a lot of these other fillies and mares, and the fact that, you basically have the who's of fillies and mares in the sprint division in this race. It's a tough ask for sure, but maybe she runs back to that 98, and that's good enough to put her in the money.
Yeah, she's good. I still think she's a notch below. I think you got to give her some time. She's going to come back as a 4-year-old and be a very good filly for Phil D'Amato. So I would watch out for her, especially going 6 and 7 on the California circuit. I think right now she's probably just not quite as good, but maybe one to throw underneath. And she's got the tactical ability. 98 puts her right into it. I would have really liked to see Sweet Azteca run last time just to see what that matchup would have been and how she compares there. Obviously, Sweet Azteca didn't run well and is out of this race now. But just maybe just a touch below.
Yeah, so I'm sure all of our thinking. Pleasant, we kind of mentioned. The last horse I'm going to talk about here, then we'll move on, guys. And apologies if we don't get to your horse. We have a lot to cover in such a short amount of time. Someone brought up Pandora's Gift as kind of a wise guy horse in here. Presque Isle Downs ran on the poly track that's over at Presque Isle, ran just behind, obviously, Roses for Deborah, who's a very nice mare in her own right. Then ran on the Franklin on the turf, and now comes into this race, which it's a really interesting move. Gets Rispoli aboard, which Rispoli's probably my favorite jockey on the West Coast. If I can just say that, I guess, out of nowhere. But this is one, if this one's taking money from 30 to 1 morning line, might be worth a look, guys. To me, there's no dirt breeding really at all in this one. I mean, Churchill Galileo has had a couple dirt starts and has one win on the dirt. However, the dam side is all turf. So going to be one to at least look at. Did obviously run well on the poly track, could translate to the dirt, but is going to have to be one to take a look at the board in the grade 1 filly and mare sprint. I'm going 946. Patrick, as a very based opinion, going 946 as well. Charlie is going 9-6-10. Noah is going 6-9-4. Guys, let's move on to race number 5, which is the return of everybody's favorite configuration, the Flat 5 Turf Sprint, the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint, obviously grade 1 for $1 million. And I'll put up the Equibase right now, Jaws, that field of 12. And the thing about this race, guys, that's interesting is the post draw. I feel like the post draw, obviously at the Flat 5, means a ton. And there's some very, very good horses that drew to the outside. But the morning line favorite is, of course, the very, very talented American runner Cogburn, Irad Ortiz, Steve Asmussen, 7-5 on the morning line. Your second choice, drawn all the way to the outside in the 12, the Brad Sell for Holly Doyle and Archie Watson at 7-2. And you have to go all the way back to the inside, and it's 8-1 is your third choice in this race with the talented West Coast runner Motorius Frisu and Phil D'Amato. Guys, putting up our picks for this race, and there's two of us that are going with Cogburn. Patrick's going with Star of Mystery, who's William Buick and Charlie Appleby at 10-1, and Noah going with the number 12 Brad Sell from the Tough Post. Patrick, I want you to go first here because, one, I feel like I kind of cut you short a little bit in the last race, but however, you have a very nice opinion here at a very nice price. This is one who's been running very well at Saratoga and Keeneland, and there's a very big buyer in there, which is, again, you're going to have to catch up to Cogburn and Bradsell, I believe, in this race, but if he can put it back together and maybe even show a little bit more of improvement for a lightly raced filly at 3 years old, could be very good and at a nice price.
Yeah, no, I mean, you look at the 3 starts in the States, the first one on Belmont weekend in the Jaipur, that race, was on that speedway turf course that weekend. And I thought the horse ran okay considering. And then in the quick call, actually being up there for that race on opening weekend of the summer meet, as soon as that horse won, I said to myself, I'm like, yeah, I thought this horse would be one of the favorites in this race, thinking after seeing that race. And then, the Keeneland race, was stuck on the inside, did draw the 1 hole there. I think Pratt would want that ride back a little bit. Just it was a little iffy and didn't really get going until late. Found a way to get up for second. Yep. So, listen, I get, Cogburn's going to be ultra tough in here. And I do want to hear, what you guys have to say about the 12 in here. But I really like Star of Mystery, especially to hit the board in here. Like this horse will definitely be a key for me in a lot of different bets.
I mean, especially look, Pat, the one thing it's going to have to class up to a lot of these horses to at least finish on the win end, but I completely respect the opinion. And obviously, the one thing I always say is I'll never talk anyone off a double-digit horse that they have on top. However, I could easily see Star of Mystery if the pace does heat up, as it tends to do a lot, of course, in these turf sprints. Star of Mystery could easily close up for third. I wouldn't have any I wouldn't have any surprise, even if for second, if this horse closes up. But he is going to have to class up to these horses to the outside. But I'll let you go first, Noah, with Bradsell, and then Charlie and I will talk about Cogburn. Again, not too much to talk about there. I feel like in this race, you have to, for me, I have to respect Bradsell and how good that he is and has been. However, this 12 post is going to be if he overcomes the 12 post and win this race, he's by far the best horse in this race.
Yeah, the 12 post is not ideal, but I don't really think it's going to be that bad just because Big Evs is going to be very quick to his inside. So he's going to be able to get over and save a little bit of ground. He is very quick, and he doesn't necessarily have one way to go. He can sit a little bit. I think if he does find himself more than 2 lengths back, I think it's going to be pretty tough for him to overcome that. But again, he's very quick. He's very prominent. He's beat similar foes in here, believing in Starlust. Let me look at my notes. 2 back. I don't remember if it was his last race or his 2 back, but it took a big effort from a very good horse in Marakova to beat him. He really doesn't have any blemishes on his resume. And if you ask and listen around, there's a lot of people that think he's just as fast, if not very, very close in terms of fakes to Cogburn. So I just think if Cogburn's going to get beat, it's probably someone that we haven't seen yet in the States.
I mean, look, I'll show a time for him right now. Cogburn has a 131, and that was the 2 back absolute romping in the Jaipur where they set the track record. Bradsell is a 130. Granted, that was 3 races back at York, but this horse figure-wise matches right up. It's just a matter of, for me, you have to respect this horse, but for me, he's going to have to overcome that 12 post. And with a horse like Big Evs just to his inside, it's going to be hard to get over and in the spot I think Bradsell wants to be in. Not saying he can't win by any means, but it's going to take a monster effort for Bradsell to win from out there, and especially beating the American, what we like to call a freak in Cogburn. Charlie, we both have him on top. It's nothing, look, again, it's nothing creative by any means. However, I feel like this whole race flows through Cogburn, especially with how fast he is early. And I'm going to play that Jaipur, guys. Beat Arzak, beat Star of Mystery in this race. And look, he's just unbelievable, really, in these races. And he's going to have to show, obviously, against the Euros, Charlie, but he's shown everything he can in the States this year.
Yeah, and I think the other part of it is just distance-wise, there's no concerns to have. Obviously, with him going 5.5, the cutback to 5 won't be a problem. He's so naturally fast. And I think the other part of it that's, really interesting, with him is like you visually watch here, and he's not even really being asked. Like he's setting a track record and going off. And like, yeah, you see the whip a little bit, but then they get towards the end again, and he goes back to more hand riding and knowing he has it. Like, I think you could argue, you see he's getting ridden out at the end. Like there was another gear that could have potentially been brought out there that we didn't have to see. And I feel like that's also what makes it interesting is as crazy as my time, I don't know if we've seen his complete and utter best effort yet. Now I will admit, because turf sprints are complete and utter chaos, I wouldn't be excited to bet this horse and that anything could happen. And I hate the short price, but I also get why there is a short price. It's not that the Euros aren't talented, because there are some very talented ones that we haven't even talked about yet that I want to talk about. But what has he done wrong? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, look here, Charlie. He's going 21-1, and he's right here being headed by a horse in Sosua Summer. And this to me was like, not my jaw dropped, but the fact that he spurts away there by 2.5, going 43 flat to the half mile is, I don't know. Like I said, they've changed these fractions, but that's unbelievable. Like this spurt away action after going those quick of fractions, he's just a freak. The whole race flows through him from a pace scenario standpoint. If he's as good as he has been, which there's no reason to believe that he's not, he should not lose. And this should be basically a move on race. But there's a lot of horses in this race that are going to have a say. And a horse we don't have anywhere that I really want to quickly mention is the Breeders' Cup winner from last year, is Big Evs. I mean, Big Evs is super fast early and maybe just doesn't have the numbers of Cogburn or Bradsell to be able to really fight for the win, at least in my opinion. I feel like he still has to be respected because last year he showed the ability to kind of rate and pass. He had a really nice post last year. This is definitely a way worse post for a flat 5 this year than he had as opposed to last year in the 4 hole. Now he gets the 11 with a horse like Bradsell who wants to be forwardly placed. But you have to respect Big Evs in this race, especially after that win in the King George. Nunthorpe against Bradsell. One I'm gonna kind of throw out. He didn't run very well last time at all. But he has numbers if you go farther back than that. I'll finish off with the horse we all love to say its name. I'll finish off with that one in a second. Charlie, last horse I want you to talk about real quick in a loaded race is the number 1 Believing, who you have in third, who's another Euro runner in here. Draws the rail. Ryan Moore hops aboard on this horse as well. So this horse should theoretically be live after losing 3 different times to Bradsell and 1 time to Big Evs.
Yeah, I absolutely love Believing in this spot. I'll be honest. I know I have the horse in third, but I was tempted as far as to move her all the way up to first. Visually, I understand she's lost to Bradsell twice, but you look, it's by a length and by 3/4 of a length, closing from the clouds out of nowhere. Now gets to save all the ground on the rail, and I think as long, she's faster than Motorious, so as long as she sends enough to be able to secure the rail, which I think she can do, RZX to the inside too. There's not a lot of crazy speed next to her. If she secures the rail and saves all the ground on the inside, and then lets Big Evs and Bradsell and Cogburn do all the dirty work and just crush each other with a crazy hot pace, I think she's incredibly dangerous. I know with Ryan Moore and the connections, she's going to take money, but I think she makes a ton of sense. And then one other thing I briefly wanted to mention, because I saw a horse I liked talked about in the chat, the number 4 horse is another closer who should not be 30-1. The horse is crazy odds because the horse got shut off on the rail, Starlust. So that's just another one if you're looking underneath for a price in a race that's utter chaos to look out for.
Yeah, and actually, I was going to bring that up, guys, and you guys, the chat beat me to the punch. I know we got a lot of astute viewers in the chat, but they beat me to the punch. They said, I've seen Sport Freak. Ooh, shout out to Sport Freak. He asked what I like about scorigamis. I love the fact that they've never happened before on Twitter, and it's this whole thing for me. So shout out Sport Freak for that one. But either way, he's been on Believing her past 3 runs, been disappointed. Just feels like she can't get the job done. I do agree with that. And Chris Couples and Sport Freak both mentioned that. Not sure if you've seen works this morning. Believing's been balking so bad. They literally got to the track and went back to the barn. They just never made it out onto the track today. So that's one thing also to keep in mind if you are a fan of Believing is her thing in the morning. I'll talk about a couple, then we'll move on. Motorious, guys, if this pace heats up, Motorious makes a ton of sense. That last race in the Green Flash, don't have time to show the replay, but if you have a chance, take a look at it. I thought that was one race where I was backing No Nate Hudson with a horse that finished third. I thought I was home free. And then basically I did the thing of the equivalent of looking over my shoulder, and this absolute beast is motoring down the center and just mowing down Rockingham Ranch's Johnny Padres. Sorry, Mike Austin, had to bring up a little bit of a fresh wound there for you. But Notorious, if the pace heats up, he has every single right to pick up the pieces late, even on the win, and wouldn't be surprised and don't forget, guys, Notorious was favored in this race last year and just couldn't get enough going in time to win, got 5th by just 1.5 lengths. There's a bunch of other Euros in here. Starlust is a very interesting horse at 30-1. A lot of people have been talking about him in the mornings. Another 3-year-old who has kind of lost to that same type of group in Bradsell, Believing, Big Evs, and over in Europe. But 30-1, you're going to get triple the price of some of these horses in here, if not more. Starlust could be interesting underneath as well. But I want to go to everybody's favorite horse to say, and that I want that Isi Vungu Vungu for Graham Motion, the South African runner. Manny Franco hops aboard as he did last time at Colonial in De Haas. The reason I like Isi Vungu Vungu, guys, in this race, at least for an underneath price, is he's going to set a lot closer than horses, and the 10 post is a little bit better, is going to be a little bit better than the 12 post. He's going to have more options to come inside especially he's going to have Cogburn, who's going to absolutely blitz him to the lead. He's going to be no problem there. Big Invasion's going to drop completely back. So will Howard Wolowitz. So should have a pretty clear path, at least to the mid pack. And if he can get going, there's numbers that he's ran in South Africa, guys. This 123 and 122 time rating easily fits him with the type of underneath crowd in this race. And at 20-1, the horse that everybody loves to say, Isi Vungu Vungu, could easily slot in somewhere like third, kind of a try-key type of perspective. Hopefully can get a nice price underneath. And I promise I did not just pick this horse in third just to say Isi Vungu Vungu, which I learned. I searched it up because I was, you got to search up a name like that, right? Apparently, Zulu is a well spoken language in South Africa by native Black South Africans. It's Zulu, and it means a storm in that language. So had to look it up. It was the fun facts with Kyle basically on Bettin and Boozin for Isi Vungu Vungu. But in the turf sprint, guys, I'm going 9, 12, 10. Patrick's going 6, 9, 12. Charlie's going 9, 12, 1. Noah's going 12, 9, 6. Again, guys, a lot of people watching. Thank you guys so much. There will be much more as a replay as well. If you guys are enjoying the show, please go down below the video player, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and be sure to tune in after this show is ended at 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, 7:30 p.m. Eastern for Picks and Ponies to talk about the late pick 5, starting, of course, with the Breeders' Cup Classic. Guys, race number 6 is the Breeders' Cup Distaff, and don't need to spend too much time on this, I believe. A lot of us, as you see on the bottom of the screen, feel like it is a match race between, of course, with the retirement of Idiomatic that kind of sucked a lot of life of the match race that was supposed to happen in this one. You have the number 2, the Grizzly Bear and Patrick's favorite horse, Torpedo Anna at 4-5, a super heavy morning line favorite, which, correct me, yeah, it's definitely the lowest morning line favorite of the entire weekend. And the closest one, I believe, is Lake Victoria. No, Cogburn at 7-5, and then Lake Victoria at 8-5. So the lowest morning line favorite of the entire weekend, number 2, Torpedo Anna, and probably deservedly so. Second choice, number 9, Awesome Result. Or no, sorry. Second choice is Raging Sea on the morning line. Excuse me. Flavian Pratt, Chad Brown at 7-2. Third choice is Awesome Result coming over from Japan at 4-1. Look, guys, all of us have 2-9 in this race exactly, and that's going to be the lowest payout exacta. It's nothing creative. However, and I'm going to show time form as well. Patrick, I got to leave you the floor here on this one, being that she is the horse that you love to talk about the most, frankly. So going to leave it to you. Time form, guys, has Torpedo Anna way out in front in this race. Obviously, they don't have the pace data for either for either Japanese runner. Awesome Result should be up decently close. In Japan, kind of pressed both ways. So we'll talk about that more, of course, in the end. So might not be as favoring to the front runners as time form points it out, Patrick, but she's, in my opinion, she should be the one to just go from the 2-hole and set the pace, especially with Candy Duran's side.
Yeah, for sure. I'm not concerned about, the trip she's going to get in this spot. Some people are a little concerned about what she's coming in, how she's coming into this race, I should say, out of that race at Parks, in the cotillion. It doesn't concern me. That was more of like a trap race, to be quite honest. I don't know. She like just
complete prep type thing.
Yeah, prep, and they didn't really train her that much into that race. Now they've gotten her up in Saratoga training for this. It'll take a monster effort to beat her in this spot. I just think she's just so classy. I will say, Awesome Result.
Sorry, go ahead. I mean, talk about and this is a horse of the year kind of solidifier for Torpedo Anna. She has a major, especially if she wins this emphatically by lengths. She has a very, very big horse of the year case, and probably, and I'm not going to say anything because I don't want to get into our Eclipse Awards bullshit, but makes a very good case. But go ahead into Awesome Result.
With the 9 Awesome Result, I mean, 7-for-7, and that last race, I mean, watching that, ultra impressive in there.
Yeah.
And just winning by the widest of margins that she has ever in her races. So. Obviously it's upsetting Idiomatic's not in here. I would have loved to have seen Torpedo Anna against Idiomatic just because, for me personally, getting a lot of crap, dealing with Torpedo Anna running in the Travers and stuff like that. I felt like this was going to be like the statement win to make
solidify the campaign. Yep,
exactly.
I get it.
But hey, listen, she gets this spot, which may be one of the softer spots she's had all year.
I mean, especially if you're talking 3-year-old racing that she's ran in. I mean, you got to look at the an awesome result with a grain of salt. She's run fantastic overseas, 7 for 7 lifetime over in Japan. Now comes over here, should be stalking, maybe pressing Torpedo Anna. I don't know if she's as fast as Torpedo Anna is early. That's going to be the major problem, I think, for everybody else in here is if Torpedo Anna plays catch me if you can. Like Patrick said, it's going to kind of take a monster effort to beat her, at least in my eyes. Noah, anything to add on the other two? If not, feel free to go into Raging Sea.
No, I don't think there's really much else to say.
I agree.
You can make the argument that Torpedo Anna, she's had a long campaign, but I don't just based off of what I know from this awesome result, I don't know if it's going to take all that much from Torpedo to get the job done. I mean, awesome result is a very good filly in her own right. Obviously, 7 for 7. Her last one was very impressive. If you saw the time form, they had Torpedo, and then the 7 was the next horse. I think the 9 will probably be in between there, probably sitting second on the outside. Yeah. But I don't know. From what I've seen from Awesome Result, I think it would just take a huge effort for her to go by Torpedo, and I don't see it.
I mean, obviously we all agree. We all have 2-9, which again might be a low price exacted, but apparently, according to us, it looks like free money in this race. Charlie, you didn't get to talk too much, obviously, in this race. Not too much to talk about realistically, as we all have the same top 2. But Candide, Ed Burke loves Candide in this race. Vauchon, Anna over Sugarfish, Anna over Candide. A lot of people like Candide in this race, and going back to that Lady Secret, of course, fits in this race, at least from an underneath perspective. Gets blinkers on, and Irad aboard for the first time.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I really like this horse in the aspect of an opportunity to make some money in this race. I mean, look, the reality that we're all talking about is Torpedo Anna is going to be nothing odds, and if we play her over Awesome Results, in theory, right, it could end up being as straightforward and easy as that and free money. But this is also a horse where we don't know what Awesome Result is. We've never seen the horse run in America, so we don't know how it'll go. And for me, with all the risks and concerns there are, now I have the horse in second because I do think that is the most likely outcome. But when we're talking about the odds discrepancy you're going to get for a solid horse in Candide who gets blinkers on, which is a good thing because the horse will be closer up, which is really what she's going to need to have any fight against Torpedo, and is going to save all the ground and gets Irad aboard, who is going to be aggressive. I just think if I'm getting a horse, there's no way she goes off at 15-1 even before we knew about scratches. I think realistically she'll probably go off as the 3rd or 4th choice, but you'll get way better odds on that exacta. And if you're trying to find a way to get money, this is a great one to look at underneath.
Absolutely, don't disagree with that with any means. And of course, I failed to mention host fail at the top of this race. Number 3, Batacuda, was a vet scratch this morning. And the other one that was a vet scratch was Miss New York as well for Jorge Delgado. So both of those horses are out, which means it's down to a field of 8, and which, of course, takes out a little bit of that money, which will make horses like Candide, Charlie, of course, a lower price, although I'm not sure she would have been 15-1 anyway. But a lot of interesting runners in here. However, like we all agree, it's going to take a monster effort to beat Torpedo Anna in this field. Again, nothing creative. However, not sure you need to get too creative in this race. And Ed Burke completely agrees with Charlie. Again, he said 2-1 Cold. Sylvain, 2-6 Raging Sea that we talked about a little bit. Won the Personal Ensign, won the Belle Dame at Aqueduct. Over Batacuda, who is honestly only an 86. Gonna have to show back to that 97 in the Personal Ensign, which got a very fast pace. But if Torpedo Anna's out there on her own, it's going to be a very, very tall task for Raging Sea. Maybe it definitely can be underneath, but on the win end, it's going to definitely be a very tall task. And Omesh, thanks so much, Omesh, for joining the show. Unfortunately, like we mentioned, Batacuda is unfortunately out in this race now. But either way, guys, could be, if you're playing a pick 4, early pick 5, could be single here. Realistically, if you like Cogburn and Torpedo Anna, could be a very nice way to try and get a lot of prices elsewhere. I'm going 296 in the grade 1 Distaff. Patrick's going 291. Charlie's also going 291 and 296 for Noah. I just realized we're kind of we're one against each other here. The other two boys got Candide, two boys got Raging Sea underneath. So we'd love to see, of course, what comes out of that. Wanted to leave a lot of time, at least enough time, guys, here, because the turf, man, what an unbelievable race this one has come out to be. And I'll show the Equibase right now, draws a full field of 13 in this race, and a lot of really good Japanese runners, a lot of good European runners, and of course some very good American runners in here as well. The morning line favorite right now is the very, very classy, the winner in many countries this year, Group 1 winner in many countries this year, might I add, the number 11 Rebels Romance, William Buick, Charlie Appleby, 5-2 on the morning line. Your second choice is the number 5 JRB, right? Is that how you say that? I believe, right? JRB?
JRB, I think, yeah.
JRB, yeah. For Levy and Meehan at 4-1. And your third choice is the number 2, the reuniting of old friends. The number 2, Emily Upjohn for Frankie Dettori and John Gosden at 5-1. Going into the picks right now. Charlie, my friend, you are based. I love that from you. Charlie and I are both going with the number 4, Luxembourg, Ryan Moore, Aiden O'Brien at 12-1, which might not get that price, to be completely honest with you, but I would love to see it if it was. Patrick's going with the number 2, the old friends, Emily Upjohn and Frankie Dettori. Noah, you are going with JRB, who I think is also very interesting, and Patrick does as well. So JRB is definitely one that people need to look at. Patrick, actually, Charlie, I'll let you go first because you've been talking last in a lot of these races. Charlie, you and I both like Luxembourg on top in this race. 12-1 morning line again. Not so sure you'll get it. Unfortunately, guys, with the Euros, we can't show the replays here on YouTube. If we do, we will get a copyright claim on them. So unfortunately, we can't show any European. But we got a guy right here with a grand old notebook about European replays for us. Yeah, look, there you go. Look at that. Look at that homework, ladies and gentlemen, right here on the Bettin and Boozin podcast. Jesus Christ.
I am Europe.
You are Europe. That's exactly
I
right.
am Europe. Oh boy.
So that's a hell of a statement there. Charlie, Luxembourg, he's been back and forth, which is the one thing why people don't really like him. But if I'm getting double digits on this horse, who was very impressive in the Coronation Cup, Aiden O'Brien was here on the podcast, said he should love the distance and love the firm ground at Del Mar, and also gets a great post as well, which is very necessary in this race going 3 turns at Del Mar.
Yeah, I mean, let's just call a spade here. The horse really hasn't been that inconsistent. If you look at the efforts, the effort 2 back, yes, was questionable. Then the effort, the UAE was questionable. But almost every other effort Luxembourg has is incredibly impressive. You get Ryan Moore aboard. It's an Aiden O'Brien horse. There's no way this horse, in my eyes, is less than 6-1. There's no way. These odds are going to get completely crushed down. The other thing is, not just for me, I like the form, and I just like the raw ability of Luxembourg, and I think he'll be in a great spot. But also just look at who this horse has run against. I mean, if you just go through the like Augusta Rodin, like a horse who was incredible in America that we got to see last time, ran against Economics and Augusta Rodin last time out, who are 2 of the best Euros that there are. I mean, you look at grade 1s everywhere. This horse doesn't shy away from running against anyone. Gets Ryan Moore back aboard after not having him the last 2 starts. This duo, between O'Brien and Moore, are so successful. They get it done here in America as well. I think from an ability perspective, a resume perspective, a trip perspective, I think Luxembourg makes a ton of sense. Again, if I could lock in any odds the whole weekend, it would be Luxembourg at 12-1. I wish I could lock these odds in.
And I'll tell you what, Charlie, the fact that he has been forwardly placed in a lot of these Europe races makes me like him even more. As you kind of said, he's a very tactical horse. Aiden O'Brien has been on both on our show here on the HHH Racing podcast and on Breakfast at the Breeders' Cup this morning. He talked to Rishi for like 15 minutes talking about all his horses. And when Luxembourg came up, he said 2 things: that they've always thought 1.5 miles is his best distance, and they've always thought that the firmer turf is what this horse wants. And even though he's won on soft ground, you look last year at Leopardstown and in Hong Kong, where he was second in the Hong Kong Cup to Romantic Warrior and only a half back in the Irish Champion Stakes behind Auguste Rodin, which the HHH Racing podcast legend Auguste Rodin. I I fully have trust in Ian O'Brien. If that's what he says this horse wants to do, and I'm getting 12-1 on a horse that has extremely comparable numbers when he runs his best, I'm going to take every single bit of those odds that he gives me, and I'm going to run with it, especially with the trip that I envision for Luxembourg. I realistically envision the exact same trip that Auguste Rodin got last year. This kind of tactical ground-saving trip on the inside, and if Ryan Moore can find that same type of seam with Luxembourg, I'm going to be very, very happy if that comes to fruition. And again, Charlie, we're not getting 12-1. It's just not happening.
We're
Probably somewhere around, 6-1, 7-1 is what I envision for Luxembourg, but still honestly wouldn't be too mad at that at all.
Agreed.
Noah, I'll go to you next, and then Patrick will go to you with number 2, Emily Upjohn. You like the number 5, JRB. I also am very interested in this horse. There's a lot of people that are interested in this horse. Has run at Longshop, at Deauville, at Ascot, both anywhere running from good firm to soft ground, has done it all super impressively. Now comes into this race where, again, has been steadily improving these numbers, might not be up to a horse older like Luxembourg, as this horse is a 3-year-old. However, this horse has all the upside in the world to run a big one on Saturday.
Yeah, certainly some upside. Obviously, you can see he's only 3, and he's very lightly raced. He's only run 7 times. Sylvain and I are thinking the same thing. I do like him in here. I think he's tactical. I was a little worried. He was kind of all out to win last time, and I don't know how great that field was in the pre-dollar. But again, I don't think he was necessarily cranked 100%. I think he's just getting good at the right time. 2-back finished behind Economics, as you see, who came back and won that Irish Champion Stakes and beat Auguste Rodin that we were talking about with Luxembourg. So some similar names in the form lines. I just think he's going to keep getting better and better. He's got that tactical edge. And this is just a combo that you don't necessarily see shipped from Europe over to the US, which I think kind of shows some confidence as a good sign.
Oh yeah, I don't disagree by any means. I thought that 2-back race was very good. I think Economics is a fantastic horse, obviously. Again, not saying something too much out of the box there, but anytime you see a horse losing the Economics, then comes back to win pretty well in the pre-dollar, now coming into this race, and I think the soft ground might have had something to do with that last race, Noah. He just didn't really, if you watch that replay, obviously you did, he didn't really seem to have that kick as he's shown in his previous races. I'm assuming it had something to do with the soft ground, which is why they probably ship him over here, because they know they're going to get that firm ground. I'm very, very interested in JRB, at least underneath, if not on the win end as well. And I think this horse, oh my God, I'm just choking myself, is a must use. Patrick, I'm going to let you go next, my friend. Again, reuniting of old friends. The last time this horse won was 2023 in the Coronation Cup at Epsom. However, was with Frankie Dettori aboard.
Yeah, you got to question, maybe why they, shipped to this race. Just horse has been a little out of it in 2024. But I think, and listening to, the Euro preview that we had with Davey Lane, I think he hit on the head. I think Gosden, the trainer, realizes this field, it's a wide open race. And why not take a shot in here, maybe revert back to that form that this horse has had in previous years. Should appreciate the ground. I don't see why this horse wouldn't appreciate, the harder turf, more firmer turf. I don't know. I was just trying to find, one of those middling prices in here. I wanted to perform Bridge on Top. I was really trying to, but I couldn't muscle up to it. But, this is a really fun race. And I think that, I could have any one of the horses that we have in the top 3 here, all of us.
Yeah. And to Scott Pinkerton's point in the chat, he says, is this a race, a payout leg for the pick 3? For a pick 3, yes, there is a pick 3 starting in race 5, going through race 7. I agree with you. Emily Upjohn's probably it's between 4th, 5th for me. There's some other horses I think are interesting in this race. Again, at least on the win end, I can't trust this horse. This horse has run very well and then run very poorly in a lot of runners. Obviously, Frankie Dettori knows this horse. He knows where to put Emily Upjohn, and obviously a mare in this race with a bunch of boys. So that obviously shows confidence from John Gosden, has put this horse through every single test over in Europe, wants to run her here. I'm assuming to get her that type of firm ground again. Obviously, Frankie Dettori back aboard is a plus for me. Just a matter of nowadays, can she class up to horses that we've already talked about in this race with Luxembourg and JRB, and a horse we never even talked about, Charlie, which Rebels Romance, which is the last horse we're going to have to talk about. Then we're going to have to move on to best bets here for this early sequence. But we'd be completely remiss if we didn't talk about Rebels Romance in this race. Buick hops aboard, but the 11 post, as Noah knows, it's going to be a pretty quick run up to that first turn from the 1.5 mile start. And if obviously Rebels Romance is going to close, so it's definitely a less concern for me than someone like Brad Sell in the Turf Sprint who wants to be forwardly placed. Charlie?
Oh, I thought you were going to know. My bad. Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think my bigger concern is not the post, to be honest with you. It's the age. I don't have the stat on me, but I think Pete Visco had given it somewhere. Somebody had pointed out how 6-year-olds do in the spot, and I don't think it's a great number.
It is over, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly.
So, and if you're giving me 5-2, I think honestly you'll get more than that. But for me, I wouldn't want to touch this one at less than 9-2, 5-1. Now, it is one where, look, if I'm playing horizontals, hasn't done anything wrong to not include, so I'd have to, consider putting the horse somewhere. But I think it's super talented. And I saw somebody in the chat say something about the 3 Charrier. So I just want to say quickly, because Mr. Europe, who I've talked to a lot, Noah, also really thinks this horse is interesting. I know the 3 had ran last year in the Breeders' Cup Turf and was kind of overlooked because the horse got third behind Auguste Rodin and Up to the Mark, who were the 2 getting all the attention in the U.S. versus Europe battle. But this one ran a very quiet but very solid third at a huge price, has kept up in solid form, ran a very nice second against Rebels Romance. And again, another one like Luxembourg, where if you're giving me 10-1, and this one, unlike Luxembourg, probably will be a lot closer to 10-1, this is one I would highly encourage people to look into using somewhere underneath.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. Just a matter of, can he class up to where he was running last year? Obviously, that race in Maidan makes a ton of sense behind Rebels Romance. However, going to need to definitely step up, but still the nice price of 10-1. Guys, we're going to get booted off the podcast if we don't get off here in the next 2 minutes. There's a lot of comments in the chat. Thank you guys all so much. It's been absolutely fantastic having this type of chat. Christopher, I see you in the chat. Wanted to give you a shout out there, man, because I haven't seen you in a little while, but you're still a very good supporter of the podcast. So shout out, Christopher, in the chat. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Harrison, I see you as well, who talked about Emily Upjohn in there, and everyone else. Again, sorry that I can't get to everybody like we normally like to do, but we're trying to fit very good races and very deep races into an hour slot. Guys, just some quick best bets for me. I didn't talk about this race for the Breeders' Cup Power Picks. So real quick, I love Vava underneath in an exacta. Ways and means, I would have to play an Insanity exacta. If Vava wins and I don't cash anything, these guys know on the screen how upset I'm going to be. The horse was literally a table at my wedding, for God's sake. And I think Luxembourg presents a really nice price in the turf. Granted, very wide open. But if you're getting high single-digit numbers on a horse as classy as Luxembourg, definitely willing to take a shot there with Aiden O'Brien, and an Aiden O'Brien I trust. Davey Lane, thanks so much, my friend, for the very kind words, and strong show to you as well. If you haven't watched his show with Howard talking about all the European runners coming over, you are definitely missing out. Boys, sorry to cut you all short, but again, appreciate you all coming on. You guys did an absolutely fantastic job for the entire Breeders' Cup. Make sure to watch Noah's show later, as they're taping a show talking about the early pick 5 for Saturday, including the races not in the Breeders' Cup. And tune in right now to talk about the late pick 5 for Breeders' Cup Championship Saturday. And until next time, everybody, crush your bets, win those photos, and stay safe, everybody, for Breeders' Cup 2024. And if you guys are going there, we will see you all there. If not, good luck, everybody. Have a great night.